grab your tea, whatever it is, and sit back and turn up the volume and enjoy the conversation that I plan to have with Dr. Rick Swire. Now, many of you know the owner of DrRick.com. However, some of you probably don't know the full background of Dr. Swire. Dr. Swire holds a doctorate of education from the University of California in Los Angeles. He has a master's degree in management information systems from George Washington University in Washington, D.C. He also holds a bachelor's degree in fine arts from the Washington University in St. Louis. He's a 23 Army veteran, by the way, who retired as a lieutenant colonel in 1990. He was awarded the Legion of Merit for his years of service. Additionally, he was awarded 2 Bronze Stars with a V for heroism in ground combat, the Presidential Unit Citation, and the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry while serving with the 101st Airborne Division in Vietnam. He's a graduate of the Field Artillery Officers Basic and Advanced Courses in the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. He was also the founder and CEO of Sarasota Online, a high-tech company that was sold to Comcast back in 1996. He helped start Backsoft Corporation, an enterprise software development company, back in 1997, whose clients included none other than Coca-Cola, Anheuser-Busch, Volkswagen, Goodyear, and others. That company, again, was sold in 2001. Dr. Swire twice chaired the Sarasota Better Business Bureau Council and sat on the board of the Greater Sarasota Chamber of Commerce. He served on the board of directors of the Community Foundation of Sarasota County from 2000 to 2009, and he served from 2006 to 2011 on the Sponsorship Advisory Committee to the Sarasota County School Board. This is a man that has been busy all his life. Welcome, please, Dr. Rick Swire. How are you, sir?
Rod, thank you so much for having me on the show, and I appreciate the introduction. Look, I'm just a simple guy who does what he can to help others, and like you, we're dedicated to furthering the cause of our constitutional republic and what it stands for. And as you know, I took an oath when I was first commissioned in the United States Army to protect and defend the Constitution, and that oath from all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that oath does not expire until the day I do. So I feel compelled to continue on that work.
Now I have to ask, do you watch the Game of Thrones?
Do I watch what?
Game of Thrones. It's
You know, that's interesting. My wife is into those. She's actually a big fan of what's it, Downton Abbey?
Oh, Downton Abbey, yes.
Yes, which is she's a big fan of that, and she also is a big fan of House of Cards. I am so much involved in politics that I don't have a lot of time to watch TV and running my online magazine, that I really don't watch a heck of a lot of TV. I don't even watch the news, which is really weird. It's kind of crazy, but it's, the only thing I do is I read your articles, and that keeps me abreast of everything, so I don't need to do anything else.
I find that I'm pretty similar. I do not watch a lot of TV. I don't watch the news. I know people can always accuse me of watching Fox News, and I just find that hilarious because I don't watch Fox News. I rarely watch the news at all. But I brought up Game of Thrones. It's a very popular show that airs on HBO. And there is this group of individuals called the Night's Watch within the program. And when you said that you would continue your vigilance and your fight until the day you died, well, their whole service mantra is that once you join the Night's Watch, it's for life. And then when you finally die, they say your watch has ended. So it just sort of reminded me of that. I don't watch a lot of I'm with your wife. I watch House of Cards. I haven't seen an episode of Downton Abbey, so I'm not even sure what that is really all about, other than that it takes place back in the early 1900s, I do believe, in England, maybe. I don't know. But I do watch House of Cards, and it's kind of interesting to see the similarities between that that show, which is also on Netflix, and the reality that we have in both the Clinton White House and now the Obama White House. It seems like the writers have taken probably the best and the worst of those two administrations and put them together into this program. And one of the things that is kind of interesting is that we have this in House of Cards, the president's wife is starting to show a little bit of political ambition, and we can see this with Hillary Clinton. We all knew that she had some sort of political ambition back in like 94, 95 when she was the head of Bill Clinton's health care initiative, and everybody called it Hillary Care. And that went down in flames, which really is kind of interesting because she's sort of taken off from that point, even though Americans didn't really like her or her government medical takeover. Somehow she feels that she's now, and she felt back then that someday she was going to be the best qualified to be president. And I'm convinced now that she had her sights set on the Oval Office for herself after her husband was gone back then. What do you think about that?
Well, no, I think that what's interesting is people always ask me about the 2016 presidential primary. And one of the things that I find is sort of interesting is that the Democratic Party is all about diversity, yet they really only have one candidate. There's the Republican field that's running for the Oval Office is much more diverse politically as well as socially, policy-wise, experientially, much more diverse than those that are running on the quote-unquote Democratic ticket, with everybody saying that Hillary's a shoo-in, which I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I can't predict the future. What I find is that ideologically, that the candidates that are running or potentially are running on the Democratic ticket are almost, there's no separation between them. They're almost exactly the same. They're either left or very far left. Now, when I say left, I don't look at politics as left and right, up and down, whatever. I look at it as on a continuum of power. And I think Game of Thrones and House of Cards, it's all about power. They're people who believe that power belongs in the hands of a very few elite are on one side, and those who believe that power belongs in the hands of the individual, and that in order to be truly prosperous and to truly understand liberty and freedom, the individual must control their lives and their property and things they own. So I look at it that way. And I think that Hillary has always been about Hillary and about power and about doing whatever it takes to win. She's she believes it's her time. She believes that she is in a position now to take the nomination from the Democratic Party. She believes she should have won in the last go around, but now she feels privileged, and she feels that she is the one that the crown should pass on to her, if you will. Now, on the other side, you have on the Republican side, you have a variety of people that have different views, have a broad variety of positions on all the different issues, and I think that's a much bigger tent than the very narrow one in the Democratic Party. But that's just my viewpoint. Two of the candidates that seem to come up all the time as in the news, and particularly recently, are Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio. The New York Times is picking on Marco, and it's actually turned into a caricature. It's made the old gray lady look like like a caricature. Picking on, he got 4 parking tickets in 17 years. Goodness, that's got to be awful. Horrible. That is clearly an evil that must be eradicated from the face of the earth. Anyone who has 4 parking tickets immediately should be sent to jail and the key thrown away. I mean, now if you happen to do other things, like run the Clinton Foundation and take money and spend it wantonly and violate tax codes and things like that, why, my goodness, that's good. That makes you qualified to be president of the United States. So I don't know. It's a strange world out there that we're living in.
That it really is. It doesn't get much. I don't know if I've fallen asleep and woken up in the Alice in Wonderland world, but you being an entrepreneur yourself, running 2 successful companies and being able to sell them, whenever I run across any of my entrepreneurial buddies, I always ask them, do you expect to someday, through all your hard work, to reap the financial rewards and be financially wealthy, whatever that level is for you? And I always get the answer of yes, because, I'm working hard, I'm building this business, and I expect to someday either sell it or the business will be a tremendous success. And yet here we have the Clintons who leave the White House, and they claim when they left the White House that they were dead broke. But yet and still they were able to buy a mansion in Chappaquiddick, and then Mrs. Clinton runs for the U.S. Senate and wins the seat in New York. And then they buy a multi-million-dollar home down in Washington, D.C., because after all, when you're a senator, you have to have a house in your own district as well as in Washington, D.C. You can't rent, which is kind of interesting. I read something the other day that talked about how if you're a senator, you're more likely to buy a home down in D.C., but if you're a representative, you're more likely to rent someplace. Maybe it's because they're up for re-election every 2 years, which may not be a bad idea for senators. But have you ever seen anybody go from being dead broke, like they claim they were, to buying 2 multi-million-dollar mini mansions, to being worth tens of millions of dollars without having a real job or running a business?
Well, of course, and what this is one of the I guess strange things in America where you leverage your political links and connections into making money from people who actually work for a living. I mean, somebody has to donate to them. So the people who are donating them are actually business people, and they're doing it because they're looking for political influence. A lot of people talk about, I get emails, I'm on the DNCC mailing list as well as the RNCC mailing list. And one of the things that always is interesting is I'm constantly getting emails about, they're outraged by the Supreme Court decision that said that, you can use money to promote a political cause, the famous Koch brothers case, I guess. And they're always saying, we got to take the money out of politics. Well, I look at it the other way. We got to take the politics out of money. and Bill and Hillary Clinton are they're the poster children for political entrepreneurship. They have leveraged their Bill's presidency and her stint as Secretary of the State Department into a multi hundreds of millions of dollars have flowed into their personal accounts as well as into their foundation accounts. And to me, that goes against everything that a progressive Democrat stands for, supposedly. Okay, so it is this hypocrisy of saying, "Oh, look, the Koch brothers are donating to this cause," and ignore the kinds of people who are donating to the Clintons, and we're talking in massive amounts. I mean, we're talking $500,000 for a speaking engagement. I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean,
it is. Wish I could get that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wish I could get $500,000 for a speaking engagement. I'd only do one.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid of taking, $500 because then I have to report it to the IRS and they'll audit me. But it's what it is. But no, I mean, and you have people who have been able to leverage their political careers into if you will, jobs that really don't produce anything. Bill and Hillary Clinton don't produce anything. They're not advancing mankind. Now, they can say that they're foundation and they have these conferences, but in fact, when you look at where's the money going, very little of it, some very small percentage, is actually going to help people. The vast majority, over 90%, is going into their pockets, paying for their plane travel and their first class reservations at, posh hotels, and none or very little is going to truly helping someone other than the Clintons. So it's kind of interesting to hear Democrats talk about the need to help the poor and need to be talk about equality and social equality and the 1% versus the 99%, and then you have Bill and Hillary Clinton that are the poster children of the 1%, and they don't even work for it. I mean, I guess you could call flying on an airplane, private airplane, first, and speaking for an hour and then getting back on an airplane and then going home and getting $500,000 for that. I guess that's work, but it's not the same. It doesn't produce anything other than people listening to you. That's about all it produces.
They have. I think they've perfected this method of. I guess for lack of a better phrase, money laundering. I sit back and at everything that this couple has been able to do and get away with, in a strange way, I just sit back and I marvel at them, because I can't think of anybody in history, inside or outside of politics, that have been able to get away with what this couple has been able to get away with successfully and still stay in the limelight as well as run for high political office. I mean, have you ever seen anything like this in your lifetime?
Well, other than Barack Obama, no. I have seen, look, I came from Missouri, and one of my favorite presidents is Harry Truman, who's a Democrat, okay? Now, here's Harry Truman, who's a guy who had a high school diploma, never went to college. By happenstance, well, of course, he was elected to the United States Senate. He was a haberdasher. I mean, he co-owned a clothing store with a friend of his who happened to be Jewish, and the company went broke, and over a period of years, Harry ended up paying off his debts, and he probably made some of the most significant decisions of any president in war and peacetime that I can think of. And yet, at the end of his presidency, he drove home. He got in his sedan, he got in his car with his wife and his luggage, and he drove home. And he lived in a home that he had inherited from his mother, with a little house in Independence, Missouri, with a white picket fence. And there's a joke, or there's a story about a man whose car broke down in front of his home, this very modest-looking home in Independence. And he walked up to the front door, knocked on the door, and former President Truman came to the door. He said, "Sir, I don't know if you can help me. My car broke down." He said, "Sure, come on in." Harry said, "Come in." And he said, "Use my phone. Hey, listen, while we're waiting, can I get you some cookies, some coffee, some tea?" They had a nice chit-chat, and eventually the wrecker came by to take the guy's car to the local garage. And as the man was leaving, he said, Harry said to him, "Well, is there anything in your that really aggravates you?" He says, "Yeah, he said the one thing that aggravates me about what's going on in America is that SOB Harry Truman." And he said, "Well, gee, I'm Harry Truman." And it's that kind of a thing. The guy was so down to earth, and he was so not into the limelight. He was into doing the job of the president. He respected the Constitution. He respected the individual responsibility. He took responsibility himself, and he never leveraged his presidency into something that it is. That is what the Democratic Party I belong to. Then it left me, like Ronald Reagan. It just left me, and ever since then, it's been a series of people who absolutely are either inept or they're narcissistic, and I would put into that narcissistic realm. It's all about me, Bill and Hillary Clinton and Barack and Michelle Obama. I would literally put them in that list. And it's sad to see, but it is what it is.
Yeah, yes, it really is. And we can, well, I find it interesting that, speaking of Marco Rubio and his ultra high speed, very expensive $80,000 souped up fishing boat that he has, how they would even try to attempt to show that Rubio is out of touch with the average person, simply because he's had 4 traffic or parking tickets in 17 years. Ooh, I mean, he's a criminal. And I might add, by the way, all the rest of those tickets that they were trying to pin on him belonged to his wife, and not one did he try to fix. Whatever one all the ones that they were, found guilty, they paid off. They didn't try to use any type of political position to get those tossed out. And frankly, the New York Times even sort of made a passing mention of all the tickets were paid. But they're ignoring things like he doesn't live in a multi-million-dollar mansion, so they ignore that kind of stuff with the Clintons, who have 2 that we know of, and of course then you add the $10 million plus pad that their daughter bought in New York City for running the foundation, and then you toss on, well, if you want to compare apples to apples, you have the wonderful Carey boat, which is a real yacht. that costs northwards of $7 million. But $80,000, $90,000 is too much to spend for a senator on a senator's salary. I don't know where these people get their measuring stick. What how they get their barometer. Other than, well, this is a Republican, he's a conservative, he's just evil. Of which, by the way, and I'm sure you'd correct me if I was wrong, but I do not believe that in this day and age that somebody like President John F. Kennedy would be considered a Democrat today. They would consider him way too conservative by today's Democratic standards. And when we get back,
yeah.
When we get back,
well, JFK. You go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to break up because I wanted you to say, I was a JFK Democrat. I joined the Army because John F. Kennedy inspired me because he was a Navy veteran who served on the famous PT-109. Almost lost his life. The boat was, being on a PT boat. It was not a very healthy thing to be in World War II. He was a lifelong member of the NRA.
Yeah.
he introduced the AR-15 rifle, which Dianne Feinstein held up over her head in the Senate, saying we'd have to ban this. He's the one that introduced that rifle into the United States military. He hated communism. He hated communists. He was a free market guy, low taxes, free market guy. John F. Kennedy would be considered a right-wing zealot. He was also a Catholic. Now, John F. Kennedy would not even make it, as a dog catcher in Massachusetts. Okay, given today's political, solid political ideological bent of the Democratic Party, and that's sad because you're right. It's a double standard. The New York Times feels that it has to bring up 4 parking tickets, that Rubio bought a $550,000 home, which is actually amazingly cheap. He's probably living in the slums in Miami. $550,000 for a home in Miami area, Miami-Dade County, he's probably living in a modest neighborhood. Yes, he bought a fishing boat. Yes, it cost $80,000, and I agree with you. Not everybody fishes, but when you live in Miami and you're from Cuba and you've got all that beautiful Atlantic and Gulf, people own boats, okay? Yes, he got some parking tickets. So great, I'm glad we brought that all up. All right, now let's talk about everybody else. Let's talk about everybody else who has done more than that. Who has more violations of the law. Let's talk about everybody who has a more expensive home, a bigger boat, and where do those people come in that are running for high public office? And it's become a joke here in Florida. I mean, it's actually become a national joke, and it's sad because the New York Times used to be. Well, I don't know if it ever was. I mean, the New York Times was a big supporter of Stalin. They were a big supporter of all those kinds of causes the media, that's why the internet and people, men like you who use the radio and the internet, thank God for the internet. And that's why the politicians want to control the internet, because what you and I say and what you and I write and what you and I post on the internet is making a difference. It's providing a view that nobody else will provide. It's providing commentary that nobody else wants to provide. And people are tired of that one-sided ideological view, and they want something different. So I think that this is, as always, technology allows us to get the story out. I look at you as one of the pamphleteers. You're very much like the reading about something important that the media wasn't covering properly, and so that's what you do. So I'm very proud that you're a contributor to and write so well and write about issues that are important. So, that's look, and you have to tell the story. I mean, you have to tell the story. You can't tell one side without telling the other side. And so let's do a head-to-head comparison between Marco Rubio and his assets and Hillary Clinton and her assets. Let's just run a list. Let's list all their assets. Everything that they own, everything, and let's just put them side by side and run that on the front page above the fold in the New York Times and let the people decide. Who's richer?
Hey, maybe they actually don't own anything because they put everything into charities and trust funds and foundations, so it will look like they really don't own much. I wouldn't put it past them to do that, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, but that's okay. You have to put those things, anything in a trust fund and the foundation is an asset. You can't say it's not an asset. So, but what the thing is that what I find is, and with politicians like Marco Rubio, here he is. You can do things. It was interesting. I was there. I just watched a video this morning before your show, and when you talk about a point, most of the time, many people go negative. Okay. So say you had a scale from 0 to 100 plus and 100 is something very positive, and you have on that same scale you have 0 to 100 minus, and 100 is a totally negative thing. You can spend your time trying to defend yourself against a negative, and the best you can ever do is arrive at 0. And what I would like to see is people like Marco and others who are attacked by the media to take the positive side, to go to here's what I'm doing to help mankind. While you're worried about my boat and how many parking tickets is, this is what I'm doing to help mankind, to help reduce child trafficking, human trafficking in the United States, to protect the state of Israel. Here's what I'm doing. You want to talk about my traffic tickets? I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the positive things that I and others are doing to advance mankind. To make this a better country, to bring wealth and prosperity to all, much like I did and my father did, and so on. I mean, that's what I would want them to talk about. But we'll have to see. I mean, there are two players in this state. Florida is a key swing state. My big concern about the state of Florida is in the last two elections, it went for President Obama by a narrow margin, about 70+ thousand votes, and then 57,000. What bothers me about the state of Florida, there are 1 million Christians who either did not register to vote in the state of Florida or did not vote in the state of Florida. That's what bothers me. We need to have a candidate that is pro-Christian, pro-Jew, pro-family, and pro-social issues. What are your thoughts about that? Because what I'm hearing from Republicans, we shouldn't talk about social issues. We'll get categorized as whatever. And Ronald Reagan built his coalition, his big tent, around a stool with three legs: the strong national security, strong economy, and pro-family policies. And with that, he built a massive coalition and won handily by very large margin, the largest that we know. and yet the Republican Party seems to want to forget about the social issues. Building strong families. Making sure there's a biological mother, and biological father in the household, which is good for everybody. And so those are things that concern me. Let's talk about the positives and not about the negatives. What are your thoughts?
Well, the negatives is makes good, I guess, makes good print. If you go in the supermarket, the magazines and newspapers that line the checkout aisles are all these wonderful truth-telling magazines that we call, rag mags. The ones that talk about aliens are running loose in the White House and that type of thing. So that's, if it's sensational, I mean, we still have Maury Povich is still on the air on TV. So, and people are more interested in American Idol and in voting in American Idol than they are voting in either their local or national election. And there is a comedian by the name of Gabriel Iglesias who came up with a brilliant idea, I thought, and maybe it's something that we should probably think of down the line. Seriously, is he said if you want to get more than 60% of the eligible voters to actually vote in a national election, what you do is you put the candidates out there for a week or two, and then on one night you just have a call-in number and say, if you want this candidate, dial this number, and candidate B is this number, and then you'll probably get like an 80% voter turnout. And the sad thing is that he was being funny, but I think all good humor has a point of truth in it, and I think he may have some truth in that. And you're correct in seeing what happened in Florida. We had 1 million plus Christians and conservatives who either didn't register or didn't vote, and that was true across the country, where we had some estimates as high as 6 or 7 million potential Republicans stayed at home during the 2012 election, giving Obama the win again. And there are a lot of people who are kind of fearing that if we don't get the perfect candidate, and of course, their candidate of choice is always the perfect candidate, then they're going to stay home. So if you nominate Rubio and not Cruz, then I'm staying home. Or if you nominate Bush and not Rand Paul, then I'm not voting because it's rigged and it's not worth doing anything about. I mean, do you? And there was I think it was Mark Stein who was on Hannity one day, and I picked it up, and he said, "You know what? I'm not looking for the perfect candidate to agree with me 100% because they don't exist. So what I'm looking for is a candidate that I can agree with on 80% of the issues. And then we can work on the other 20%. But if we get to 80%, that's something that we can work with and move forward on." And I thought that was kind of a very good, solid basis to go from. Because let's face it, our founding fathers, they didn't agree on everything. I mean, they agreed on the macro, the big picture, the big tent type of thing, freedom. They knew that we needed a constitution, that we needed to protect the people's liberties, we needed to protect the states' rights. They all agreed on that. But they did disagree vehemently on exactly how to achieve that goal. So I don't see why people think that we need to agree on 95 or 100% with a candidate today that they're going to vote for. And indeed, as we come down to this this vote that's happening today about TPP and such, that we're finding that some of the candidates, leading Republican candidates, seem like they're leaning towards voting for it, which has got a lot of their supporters up in arms, as if to say, well, if he votes for this, I'm not gonna support him anymore. I mean, yeah, it's probably not a very good idea. I mean, we all don't really know what's in that bill because nobody's been able to see it. But it sounds like it's not a win-win for the United States. But at the same time, are you really going to dump a candidate or stop supporting someone because of one vote?
And that's always the dilemma. The dilemma is we have groups out there. There are groups that are single-issue groups. Now, what's interesting is the Democrats have been able to create a coalition of single-issue groups. They have the groups who, love the big government. They have the groups that are LGBT. They have the groups who, that support certain causes like abortion rights and so on. Women's right to choose. And so the Democrats have been very good at creating a coalition of single-issue groups. The Republicans do not do that. And I agree. What wins elections are ideas. What wins elections are big ideas. and what we're missing is the part of the big idea that nobody wants to talk about, which is keeping particularly Christians home. If you if you don't want to talk about marriage, if you don't want to talk about abortion, if you don't want to talk about social issues, look, everything in politics has the idea that you can separate politics and religion is foolish at best and has hurt the Republican Party at worst. In particular, every political issue, every law has a moral context. It involves every political topic, whether it's the environment, to national security, to education, to the economy. All of that has a moral side to it. For example, I talk to people. People talk. I give presentations on the environment, and I talk about the Congress has passed a mandated that a certain amount of ethanol go in our gasoline. And they did it, and the Republicans and Democrats alike voted for that. And I point out that there are about 11 million people, according to the United Nations, that die of starvation globally. Of that group of 11 million, about 8 million are under the age of 14. And I point out that for us to use food, which corn is, because corn is used primarily to make ethanol, to use food for fuel is immoral. I would rather see us ship the corn to places where people are starving and give it to them for free than us putting it in our gas tank and burning it. And people kind of look at you and go, and then when people talk about the abortion issue, I say, well, now let's think about this. Approximately 50, between the 57 and 60 million children have been aborted. Now think of if they hadn't been, what kind of a workforce would we have in the United States of America? We would have 57 more workers. Now, not all of those workers would be productive, obviously. Some would be, homemakers, and some may be, have been born with certain anomalies and so on. But we would have a workforce, a labor workforce that is massive. We wouldn't need to be having people brought in. Another interesting thing is, if you look at where the abortion clinics are located, like in my area, in Sarasota County, we have the largest abortion clinic in the state of Florida. It's located in an area called Newtown. That is a minority neighborhood. If we didn't have abortion, the black population in America wouldn't be 13%. It would be 31%. Now, think about that. That is, to me, that's the most racist program in the world, because we're killing black children. So you sit there and you say, why aren't politicians talking about that? And it's because they're afraid to. They're afraid to. And but you and I can write about it. You and I can talk about it on the radio and see what, kind of feedback we get. But, those are issues that need to be addressed, but not from a man. What is better for man? What is better for mankind? What is it that really is important that advances mankind versus what drags mankind back to the Stone Age? And you will find that if the Republican Party would pick up on those social issues, and not be afraid to be called a climate change denier. The Republicans, look, I don't deny that the climate changes. What I deny is that I'm responsible for the changing climate, that somehow I can change my behavior by not using fossil fuel. I was interested. I was watching a video where a young man was talking about a friend of his had a premature baby, and the only thing that saved that baby was an incubator. The only thing and of course the incubator is made out of plastic, and of course it requires energy to run the incubator, and plastic and the energy was produced by oil. And he compared that to a baby in Nigeria that is born prematurely, but there is no energy. There's no cheap energy. And because there is no energy, no cheap energy, hospitals don't have incubators, so those premature black babies just die. That's a human interest story. That's a human issue. That's a humanity issue. That is something that we need to discuss, and we're not discussing it. And you can't allow yourself to be put into a box because of someone who throws up, we got to save the planet. Well, if you want to save the planet, you're killing humans. Well, and they will actually say that's okay. That's what we want. That's the end game. The Sierra Club will say that is the end game. They actually tell mothers not to have children because it increases their carbon footprint sixfold. Well, no, is that a moral issue? Of course it is. What are you telling me? I shouldn't have a baby because it's going to increase my carbon footprint by sixfold? Is that really what this is all about? And make them look like a bunch of idiots, But unfortunately, our politicians don't want to stand up to that.
No, there's the Obama administration is loaded with people in high and low levels that believe in, the old mantra, the population control myth that they buy into the notion that the planet can only successfully and efficiently support a maximum of 2 to 3 billion people, not the current 7 billion. So that we need to, depopulate a number of places on the planet in order to get back down to that number of 2 to 3 billion. Now you mentioned about the moral equivalent of energy use, and I agree. This whole ethanol using a food source as an energy source has never been a wise thing at any time in history, especially now when we do have so many people that the left is claiming is starving to death. Well, okay, if you have this many children in Africa and in certain parts of Asia who are dying of starvation, why are we burning food in our engines? We've just gotten word over the past couple of days that Obama has ordered his EPA basically to come up with regulations that are now going to put tailpipe emission restrictions on jet aircraft. I mean, really? Are we really going to go down? Let's face it. If there is any industry that really is looking for and wants the most efficient fuel consumption possible, it would be the airline industry, because jet fuel is their biggest expense. And if they could cut back on the use of how much every aircraft burns, that would translate money into their pocket. So this whole notion that a government agency that has no entrepreneurs in it, no business people in it, that do not understand business, are going to order plane manufacturers and airlines to come up with aircraft that meet their standards. Have we lost our collective minds on this kind of stuff?
Well, the answer is yes, because again, government, the whole idea of government is the only way that government can change behaviors by using force. And because it uses force, and force can be physical force, in other words, they can take away your liberty and put you in jail, or they can do it by laws and rules and regulations. I was talking to someone, a person, and in Florida, for example, we just finished up our legislative session. They're into a special session talking about Medicaid expansion. And the cost of Medicaid expansion in the state of Florida. The governor is against it. Some of the Republicans and all the Democrats are wanting to expand Medicaid in the state of Florida, which will cost the state huge amounts of money. But the issue is a bigger issue. Government. It's interesting because senators in the state of Florida can submit as many bills as they want. In the Florida House, each member of the House is restricted to 5 bills. And my question is, we have so many laws on the books right now in the state of Florida, we should have it the opposite. Senators can repeal as many laws as makes sense to repeal because we have too many, and representatives can repeal or roll back or reduce the impact of at least five laws. And that's what we're finding is that government grows because it has to expand its control. And what you just said about the EPA, is absolutely correct. I mean, in the state of Florida, the EPA is putting in water restrictions. It is managing literally ponds. Now, what is the federal government's role in managing the water quality of a pond in someone's backyard? There is none, and it's all nefarious. It's a way of controlling people's behavior.
Well, you got to be able to control that pond. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time together, Dr. Schweitzer. If you could tell people how they could reach you and your website and how they can view what you're doing.
Well, you're right. The hour went by so fast. Yes, if they go to www.drdrrichswire.com, no spaces, no periods, just DRRICHSWIER.com. They can read all your great articles, Rod, and of course we have about 80 contributors that write about a variety of topics, and we'd love to get their feedback.
Well, it has been a pleasure, and yes, it was a fast hour. Thank you so much for being able to be here with me this morning, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Well, thank you, and blessings to you and your team, and you've got a great group of people, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Talk to you again soon. Ladies and gentlemen,
yes, sir.
That was Dr. Rich Swire, and that will bring us to the end of our program for today. But we will be back here next week. Just